Elon Musk sat quietly in his office, a rare moment of stillness in a life defined by the relentless pace of innovation and ambition. Surrounded by futuristic prototypes and the hum of high-speed internet, he allowed himself a pause. In that rare silence, a curious thought began to take shape. What would happen if people no longer recognized him? How would they treat someone who appeared to have nothing? Someone stripped of the glitzy veneer that had defined his public persona. The idea soon became irresistible, evolving into a challenge that would test not only the perceptions of the world around him, but also his own understanding of humanity. Over the next few weeks, in private meetings and secretive conversations with trusted colleagues, Elon refined his plan. His goal was not to embarrass or shame anyone, but to explore the raw truth of human nature. Would people see the man behind the fortune if he were forced to appear as an ordinary, even downtrodden individual? When the day finally came, it was an overcast Thursday afternoon. Elon had meticulously arranged every detail of his transformation. Gone were the tailored suits and the unmistakable confidence. Instead, he had chosen a disguise that was simple yet effective. Wearing secondhand clothing from a local thrift shop, scuffed sneakers that barely held together, and a scruffy, unkempt wig that masked his familiar features, he looked every bit the man who had fallen on hard times. A small makeup team had been brought in to add subtle wear and tear to his face, softening the angles and lines that millions recognized from magazine covers and news feeds. The final result was stunning. Elon Musk, the billionaire innovator, now looked like any ordinary man struggling to survive. Taking one last long look in the mirror, he barely recognized the stranger who stared back. For the first time in years, he felt invisible, stripped of the identity that had defined him for decades. With a deep, steadying breath, he stepped out of his office and into the unknown. Elon's destination was chosen with care: the Copper Elm, an upscale restaurant nestled in the vibrant arts and culture scene of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Known for its exclusivity and elegant clientele, the Copper Elm was the perfect testing ground. Here, amidst polished hardwood floors, sparkling chandeliers, and the refined murmur of conversation, Elon would observe firsthand how people reacted to someone who looked as if he had nothing to offer. No wealth, no recognizable status, no trace of the man who dominated headlines. As Elon traveled through the bustling streets of Santa Fe, his heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The city, steeped in history and artistic tradition, was a world away from the high-tech corridors of his own companies. Yet it was here, in this vibrant, unpredictable environment, that he hoped to uncover a deeper truth about human behavior. After a short ride, Elon arrived at the Copper Elm. The restaurant's grand double doors beckoned him in, and as he approached, he could already feel the weight of eyes upon him. Though, at that moment, he remained unseen, hidden behind the carefully constructed disguise. Inside the Copper Elm, elegance reigned. The chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow over tables set with crisp linens and gleaming silverware. Soft classical music mingled with the low hum of conversation as diners enjoyed a sumptuous meal. Every detail spoke of refinement and exclusivity, and yet, beneath the surface, there was a palpable sense of scrutiny. Elon stepped cautiously onto the polished hardwood floor. Every scuff of his worn sneakers echoed slightly, a reminder that he was not dressed in the immaculate attire typically expected in such a venue. His presence, though unassuming, did not go unnoticed. The hostess, a young woman in a perfectly tailored uniform, approached him with a professional smile. Her eyes, however, betrayed a hint of uncertainty as she took in his disheveled appearance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but strained. Elon's response was measured and soft. "Yes, Elon," he said, deliberately using his first name in a gentle tone. "I'd like a table for one." The hostess's smile wavered as she glanced around, noting the nearby manager who watched the interaction closely. "We're fully booked tonight," she explained quickly, her eyes flicking toward a row of empty tables that, despite their availability, remained unoccupied. Elon caught the subtle look but said nothing. Instead, he waited, letting the silence hang heavy in the air, a silence that was soon to speak volumes about the unspoken judgments of those around him. From a corner of the restaurant, a young server named Sophia noticed the unusual scene unfolding at the entrance. Sophia, only a few months into her job at the Copper Elm, had a spark in her eyes, a genuine curiosity and kindness that set her apart from the more jaded staff. She could tell something was different about the man who had just entered. There was an air of quiet dignity beneath his rough exterior, a hint that he was more than just another transient seeking refuge. "I can seat him," Sophia announced softly before the hostess could insist otherwise. Her words broke through the tension, and for a brief moment the entire restaurant seemed to pause. Managers exchanged glances, some frowning in disapproval, others curious. But Sophia's gentle resolve forced the issue. With a warm smile, Sophia led Elon to a small table near the kitchen doors. It wasn't the most glamorous spot, but it was a seat, and to Elon that was enough. "Thank you," he said, his tone sincere as he settled into the chair. Sophia placed a menu in front of him with care, her voice quiet, "Take your time." As Elon scanned the menu, he couldn't help but notice the subtle yet telling reactions from other diners. Conversations hushed as curious glances were thrown his way and whispers spread among the tables. Some patrons openly speculated about his identity. Many assumed he was a down-and-out vagabond. The staff, too, seemed uneasy. The hostess avoided his gaze, and even the manager cast occasional looks of disapproval. Every reaction, every judgmental murmur, added a layer of insight to Elon's experiment. Elon's meal was simple, a bowl of tomato bisque and a small basket of freshly baked bread. As he ate, he observed the restaurant with the precision of a scientist on a mission. Every detail mattered: the tone of the voices, the body language of the diners, the unspoken biases that seemed to seep from every corner of the room. He noted how some people openly glared at him, while others cast sympathetic glances. Through it all, he felt a mixture of sadness and validation. His disguise had stripped him of the power that his public persona normally granted him, leaving him vulnerable to the raw, unfiltered judgment of those around him. While he savored his meal, he couldn't help but notice Sophia moving gracefully between tables. She exuded a quiet confidence and kindness that contrasted sharply with the sneers and whispers of others. At one point, an older woman with a stern expression called out to Sophia, "Why are you wasting time on him?" The comment was muttered under her breath, meant for a friend's ear, but Sophia heard it all the same. With unwavering poise, she replied softly, "I believe everyone deserves respect, ma'am." The older woman huffed and returned to her conversation, but Sophia's response lingered in the air. When it was time to take his order, another server approached, a young man whose tone was curt and impatient. "Are you planning to order anything else?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "No, thank you," Elon replied calmly, his voice steady. The server's tight smile and muttered remark, "waste of space," were noted silently by Elon, each unkind word fueling his curiosity about the true nature of human empathy. After his meal, as the staff cleared his table, Sophia paused. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly, genuine concern in her eyes. Surprised by her kindness, Elon met her gaze. "Yes, thank you for your kindness," he replied, a small smile forming on his lips. In that brief, quiet exchange, he saw the humanity he had hoped to uncover, a glimmer of empathy in a world too often ruled by superficial judgments. As the evening wore on, the subtle experiment that Elon had set into motion was only just beginning to reveal its truths. The restaurant's patrons, who had earlier treated him as an invisible outlier, now found themselves increasingly aware of his presence. Whispers of discontent, speculation, and even disdain grew louder, as diners exchanged remarks about the man who appeared to be nothing more than a downtrodden wanderer. The tension reached its peak when a well-dressed hostess, her smile barely concealing disapproval, approached him again as he finished his meal. "Sir," she said in a clipped tone, "if you're finished, I'm afraid I must ask you to leave." Her words carried the weight of the establishment's unspoken rules, a rule that only those with status and wealth were welcome here. Instead of reacting with anger or indignation, Elon's expression remained calm. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his seat. The room fell into a heavy silence as every eye turned toward him. With measured steps, he made his way to the center of the room. Every movement seemed magnified, every scuff of his worn shoes echoing like a challenge to the status quo. At that moment, the murmurs and whispers ceased, replaced by a tense expectancy. The manager, now visibly agitated, approached him briskly. "Excuse me, sir," the manager said sharply. "We kindly ask that you leave if you're finished." Elon raised a hand, gently but firmly interjecting, "I'll leave shortly, but before I do, I need to say something." His voice was steady, carrying a weight that silenced even the most skeptical whispers. Slowly, with deliberate care, Elon reached up and removed the wig that had concealed his identity. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the familiar face of Elon Musk emerged. A face that had defined innovation and success for millions. "Yes, it's me," he announced. His tone neither boastful nor defensive, but reflective and sincere. "Tonight, I came here not as the billionaire you know, but as a man stripped of his accolades, someone who might easily be ignored or scorned. I did this to see how we treat one another when we judge only by appearances." The room was stunned into silence. Elon's revelation hung in the air, a powerful reminder that beneath the surface of wealth and success, every human being was vulnerable to judgment and misunderstanding. "I saw disdain, I heard whispers, I witnessed judgment, all because of how I appeared tonight," he continued. "But amid all this, there was one person who treated me with kindness and respect." His eyes sought out Sophia, who stood nearby with her tray of empty glasses, her gaze steady and compassionate. "Sophia," he said, gesturing for her to step forward. "You didn't know who I was, yet you chose to treat me like a human being. That is the kind of character this world needs." Sophia's face flushed with a mix of surprise and humility as she slowly made her way toward him. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted dramatically. The manager, the other staff, and even the harsh whispers of some patrons seemed to fade as Elon continued. "To those of you who judge me tonight, let this be a lesson. Appearances are deceiving. How you treat others reveals your true character. I have come here to remind us all that every person deserves to be seen and respected, no matter their circumstances." Reaching into his pocket, Elon produced a small envelope and handed it to Sophia. "This is for you," he said softly. Inside, she found a handwritten note and a check, a gesture of gratitude for her simple yet profound kindness. The check, written for a life-changing sum, was accompanied by Elon's heartfelt words. "Thank you for your empathy. Use this gift to follow your dreams and never lose that spark of kindness." For a long, charged moment, the room was silent. Then, slowly, Murmurs of astonishment began to ripple through the diners. Even those who had earlier sneered now looked on in thoughtful silence. Some faced downward, their eyes avoiding the truth now laid bare. Others exchanged looks of regret, as if suddenly aware of their own shallow judgments. As Elon gathered his things, he addressed the room once more. "Before I leave, remember this. Kindness and respect are more powerful than wealth or status. I challenge you all to look beyond the surface and see the person within. Thank you." With that, he turned and walked toward the exit, leaving a room forever changed by his bold experiment. In the days that followed, news of Elon Musk's undercover experiment spread like wildfire. Social media platforms buzzed with heated discussions, debates, and reflections on the nature of judgment and empathy. Headlines ranged from "Elon Musk's undercover experiment reveals the true face of humanity" to "Billionaire discovers kindness amidst criticism at upscale restaurant." Videos captured on cell phones by patrons went viral, and soon the story reached millions across the nation and beyond. The Copper Elm became a focal point of public conversation. While some critics argued that Elon's stunt was merely a publicity stunt, many praised the event as a genuine call to examine the way society treats those it deems different. Social commentators debated the nature of identity, privilege, and the power of kindness, an issue that resonated deeply in a world often divided by superficial judgments. Sophia's life, in particular, underwent a dramatic transformation. Within days of the event, reporters sought her out for interviews. Initially overwhelmed by the sudden attention, she soon embraced her newfound role as a spokesperson for compassion and empathy in the service industry. "It wasn't about knowing who he was," she explained in one interview. "It was about treating every person with dignity and respect. That's a lesson we all need to learn." The $50,000 check allowed her to enroll in culinary school, a dream she had long put off in favor of working low-paid jobs. More than that, however, her experience at the Copper Elm ignited a passion to advocate for kindness in everyday interactions. She began speaking at local community centers, sharing her story and urging others to look past appearances. Her authenticity and warmth resonated with many, and she soon became a symbol of the power of empathy. Back at the Copper Elm, the management, chastened by the events of that night, underwent an internal transformation. The manager, who had initially been intent on enforcing strict policies and maintaining an air of exclusivity, held a meeting with his staff at the close of the evening. "Tonight, votre tuira," he said quietly, "we witness something extraordinary. Let us use this as a chance to reflect on who we are and what we stand for. Our patrons come here not just for food, but for an experience. Let's ensure that our experience is one of warmth, respect, and genuine hospitality." Over the following weeks, new training programs emphasizing empathy and respect were implemented. Staff were encouraged to engage with guests genuinely, to set aside preconceived notions, and to treat every person who walked through the door as someone deserving of kindness. Elon Musk's experiment had sparked a broader national conversation about the role of appearance, empathy, and leadership in modern society. Talk shows, news segments, and online forums were filled with debates on whether society should judge individuals based on wealth, appearance, or behavior, and how a simple act of kindness could challenge even the deepest biases. In one televised interview, Elon reflected on the experience with a sincerity that surprised even his most ardent critics. "What I learned that night was that the measure of our society isn't how we treat the rich or powerful," he said, "but how we treat the least among us. When I stripped away my identity and walked among you as an ordinary man, I discovered that true wealth lies in kindness and respect. We must all strive to see beyond the surface." His words struck a chord, resonating with viewers from all walks of life. In schools, children began keeping their own prayer diaries and journals about the importance of empathy. Community leaders organized events aimed at bridging divides, bringing together people who had once been bitter adversaries to share their stories, listen to one another, and foster understanding. Local churches, too, embraced the message. At Grace and Faith Church in Pennsylvania, where a little girl's heartfelt question had once sparked a revival, congregations expanded their outreach programs, inviting people from all backgrounds to join in community meals, dialogue sessions, and prayer circles. The idea that every person, regardless of appearance or status, deserved respect began to take root in neighborhoods across the country. Even social media influencers and celebrities joined the conversation, sharing their own stories of unexpected kindness and urging their followers to practice empathy. Hashtags like Kindness Revolution and See Beyond the Surface trended for days, turning what had begun as an experiment into a full-blown movement. In the quiet moments that followed the spectacle at the Copper Elm, Elon Musk found time for reflection in his private office. Surrounded by prototypes and plans for future ventures, be it Mars colonization or the next revolutionary project, he allowed himself to revisit the simple truth that had emerged that night. In a journal entry he later shared privately, he wrote, "I have always believed in the power of technology to transform our world. But last Thursday, as I walked among strangers and was judged solely on my appearance, I discovered that true transformation begins with human connection. Beneath the veneer of wealth and innovation, we are all the same. Fragile, imperfect, and in desperate need of compassion. This experiment has taught me that the future must be built on the foundation of empathy. For it is in our shared humanity that we find the strength to overcome any challenge." Elon's introspection resonated with those around him as well. At the Copper Elm, Sophia and the other staff members began to see their roles not just as servers in a restaurant, but as guardians of kindness, each interaction an opportunity to change a life. The restaurant, once a symbol of exclusivity and silent judgment, slowly transformed into a community hub where every patron was treated with dignity. Meanwhile, patrons who had initially arrived with judgmental eyes began to change. Conversations at neighboring tables turned from idle gossip to reflections on the meaning of respect and the ways in which appearances could be deceiving. Some diners, visibly moved, began to share stories of their own experiences with kindness that had defied societal expectations. In one particularly memorable exchange, an older gentleman, his eyes moist with regret, admitted, "I used to think that a person's worth was measured by their wealth or status, but tonight I've learned that it's the compassion we show that defines us." As the weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of that fateful evening began to shape a new vision for leadership. Not just in the corporate world, but across communities and government alike. Inspired by the events at the Copper Elm, a group of forward-thinking leaders came together to launch the National Empathy Initiative, a program dedicated to fostering compassion and understanding among public officials and community leaders. The initiative aimed to bridge the gap between different segments of society by encouraging dialogue, mentorship, and community service, all underpinned by the belief that true leadership was rooted in empathy. Elon Musk lent his support wholeheartedly, stating in a televised address, "Innovation isn't just about technology, it's about people. Our future depends on our ability to lead with kindness, to listen with open hearts, and to value every person regardless of their circumstances." His remarks were met with widespread applause, and soon, similar initiatives sprouted in cities across the country. At the core of these efforts was a simple idea. If leaders could be held accountable not only for their policies, but for the way they treated others, the nation could begin to heal its deep-seated divisions. Schools incorporated programs that taught children the importance of empathy, while local governments organized community forums that welcomed voices from every corner of society. The movement gained momentum, fueled by social media, grassroots organizing, and the compelling narrative of that transformative night. Years later, the legacy of that overcast Thursday at the Copper Elm remained etched in the collective memory of the nation. What began as an experiment in anonymity had blossomed into a powerful symbol of the potential for kindness to bridge even the widest divides. Elon Musk's bold act of shedding his identity to witness humanity's true nature became a touchstone for discussions about empathy, leadership, and the role of technology in modern society. Sophia, now well on her way to becoming a renowned chef and an advocate for inclusivity in the service industry, often reflected on that night as the turning point in her life. "It wasn't just about a billionaire's experiment," she said in one interview. "It was about a moment when someone dared to challenge our assumptions. When we were forced to confront our own biases, that night, I learned that every act of kindness can create ripples that change lives." Elon, for his part, continued to champion the importance of human connection, balancing his drive for technological progress with a newfound commitment to compassion. In boardroom meetings and interviews alike, he reminded his teams that behind every innovation lay the human spirit, a spirit that must be nurtured and respected. At SpaceX, the integration of Harper's manual override system became a permanent part of the company's ethos. The lesson was clear: even as algorithms and artificial intelligence advanced, nothing could replace the instinct, experience, and intuition of the human mind. This hybrid approach, melding the best of both worlds, propelled SpaceX to new heights, reinforcing the idea that progress was a shared journey built on the contributions of every generation. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the world slept and the stars shimmered in the vast expanse above, the legacy of that day continued to echo. In churches, community centers, boardrooms, and classrooms, people remembered the story of a little girl's question that brought a congregation to tears and compelled a billionaire to reveal a side of himself few had ever seen. The impact was far-reaching. New programs emerged that promoted intergenerational mentorship, uniting the wisdom of the past with the innovation of the future. Empathy and kindness became central themes in leadership training, ensuring that the mistakes of judgment and bias were not repeated. And in every corner of the nation, the message that true greatness lies not in wealth or status, but in the compassion we extend to one another, resonated deeply. As you reflect on this story, ask yourself, what might happen in our nation if we all started seeing our leaders and each other through the eyes of faith and empathy instead of suspicion and fear? Could a simple act of kindness bridge the gap between the privileged and the overlooked? The story of that transformative evening at the Copper Elm offers no easy answers, but it leaves us with a powerful challenge: to look beyond the surface, to question our assumptions, and to let our hearts guide our actions. This is not just a tale of one man's experiment or a little girl's question, it's a call to action. It reminds us that even in a world dominated by technology and superficial judgments, the human spirit can still shine brightly. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes the smallest voices can spark the most profound revolutions. In our fast-paced, often impersonal modern world, it is easy to forget the value of genuine human connection. Elon Musk's undercover experiment revealed a simple yet powerful truth. When we strip away the trappings of wealth, fame, and preconceived notions, we are left with the essence of who we are. And that essence deserves respect. By challenging people to treat others not as objects of judgment but as human beings, we can begin to heal the divisions that separate us. So, as you leave this narrative, consider this. What if each of us started our day by asking ourselves how we can show kindness and understanding? What if we looked beyond appearances to see the person behind the surface? Perhaps then, we could build a future where empathy and respect are the true markers of success, and where every individual is valued for the unique story they carry. I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe that empathy can transform leadership? Have you ever experienced a moment when kindness changed your perspective? Let me know which state or country you're joining us from today, and if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more narratives that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the enduring power of the human spirit.